I am so excited for this week's episode. It's something that I'm passionate about, as I am with most of my episodes, as you've heard me and all my other intros. But this week I have Bryan and Melissa Wright in the studio, and they are going to talk about their journey as a blended family. You'll hear their story, so I don't want to tell too much of it here, but I know that whether you are navigating being a blended family or you love somebody who is working to bring two separate biological families together through a new marriage, I know this episode is going to be a wonderful resource for you. And most of all, I think you're going to be encouraged that a blended family can find a really, really beautiful place and rhythm if the parents put in the work. And that's what Bryan and Melissa are going to talk to you all about. So enjoy this episode on the beauty of a blended family. Okay, are we good, Chris? Okay.
We're good to go.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you guys here. It's kind of like we do in unofficial starts because this is so chill. But I'm really grateful to Bryan and Melissa for coming in and talking about blended families. And so maybe a way to start is both of your individual journeys before you met each other, because you both brought kids into this marriage, right?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe, Melissa, do you want to start?
Sure.
Your journey and tell me about your kids, all of it.
Okay. So
and I'll interrupt you all the time and ask more questions because that's my MO.
No, and I love, one of the things about blended families is you're right, you come in, I read, I follow like a stepmom kind of magazine and I belong to a community. And one of the things they've said is a blended family is such a different start.
Yes.
To than just the normal, we met, we got married, and life was bliss after that. So,
which they're all lying about that anyways.
Are you sure?
But really, really blended families come with its own like set of mourning because something had to end for now something else to begin, right?
Yeah.
And so I grew up in the church. My parents are pastors. Wow. And so I've been in ministry my whole life. San Diego was actually where we were from. Okay. My parents are missions pastors. So I've been doing missions since I was probably, I think my first mission trip was when I was 8.
Oh my
to Africa. And then life was never the same after that. You just can't go to normal high school after that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So I have been in ministry my whole life. I went to a Christian university and met my first husband there. And, life just didn't turn out the way that it was, supposed to. And we had our daughter.
What's her name?
Her name is Malin.
Malin.
So she's my oldest. Okay. And she is now 7. So back in 2013, and my first husband and I were in the church. So we were highly involved here in Dallas, and we were both on staff, and I did kids ministry and missions and all sorts of stuff. And then he was a missions kid as well. And, I think everybody's story is unique and everybody has a different reason for what happened. But I had a lot of trauma that I had not spoken with anybody about from my childhood in ministry, in family members, like several things that I had never, ever spoken aloud about. And so
even with your ex-husband?
Yeah. So it was like this kind of big old secret that always was there because it's what happened when I was very young, like 3, 5, 7, several like really intense things. And so,
Abusive.
Growing up, So, and then you grow up, it was, I can be super honest. It was sexual abuse.
Sexual abuse. Okay. Yeah. You can say anything here. So it was sexual abuse.
Yeah. So sexual abuse with, pastors, with uncles, with all sorts of people. And so I think for 26 years, I carried this like secret and shame and, just, helping everybody else in the church and helping everybody else because there was like secretly so much brokenness like deep inside of me. And so, I was needing an outlet and needing something. So I honestly, like, I had a very messy way that I got a divorce. And so not proud of it, but was just at the most broken place in my heart and in my life. And so really used the church, I mean, like, as even just a way to almost prove to God that, like, I'm sorry, or I don't know how can I serve you and get rid of this, and how can I do this? Yeah. And so real. So honestly, I guess I'll just be honest. So I had an affair.
Yeah.
And I decided to come out about it instead of like get caught or something like that. It was just tearing me up. Yep. So my dad would be at the end of my bed, and in the middle of the night, I would just, like, I was an adult, but I was living with them. Me and my husband were separated. And my dad would come, and again, the pastor, loving man that he is, he would come and he would pray at the end of my bed. And he would just say, God, like, just save her marriage, or God, just like do something. And he didn't know I was like, would wake up and hear it. And so I got real with God and was like, here's the deal. I'm going to own everything.
Wow.
And do it all. So
wow.
I chose a date.
That's brave.
I chose a date. I came out to my parents and said, here's what's been going on. Here's the lie that's been going on the last several months. And then I said, and I need you to know these are the things that happened to me when I was a little kid, and the pastors, your friends, your brother, your whatever, all made me stay quiet and secret. And so I blew up. I mean, I blew up my life as it was in one day and in one moment. And then
and Malin's how old at this time?
So Malin was still probably only like 9 months old, maybe a year.
So and you've got a lot.
So I had a lot going on.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, Melissa.
And came forth to my husband at the time. We went through our own process of deciding what we wanted to do and what we needed to do. But and then I came out to my pastors at the church. And so to me at the moment, I had so many secrets. You had to get it out. I had deep secrets that I had to just clear everything and press reset. And while that sounds really awesome,
it was ugly.
It was terrible. I mean, probably the worst. Like, I became depressed. Like, it was bad. Yep. It was bad because my whole life was ministry. My whole prepping, my entire childhood was, I was as a 9-year-old speaking on stage and giving words everything and prophesying and things like yourself. That. Yeah. So my entire life was setting me up to like become a pastor and a missionary and doing all these things. And like in one choice was wiped away clean. Like I didn't even have I didn't even know like who I was after that. And it was crazy. It was.
And how
crazy.
Old were you?
So I was, I guess, 26, 27.
So young.
Yeah.
You're still a baby at that point.
I had lived a lot of life that I thought I was older, but now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know. Your marriage ends, you've got a baby, and your life is over as you know it. Yes.
At that point. Okay, so let's go over to Bryan now.
Okay.
You guys, I love you guys.
We talked so much like last night, like, okay, what are we allowed to
thank
say?
you for sharing all this. I've told you guys this before, like when I walked in, but I want to break the stigma of.
I do too.
And I'm so grateful to you guys because so many people would never want to share the ugly parts of life. And if somebody pretends like they don't limp, I always say never trust them.
Yep.
Because we all have stuff. So I'm just so grateful. Okay.
Well, for me, it's you couldn't be more opposite as far as the journey.
Okay. Yeah.
She mentioned ministry and church a lot. My story is not, it's not that way. So for me, it was just, again, my path was, married, someone I went to school with since like 5th grade, 6th grade, right? Knew my whole life.
Childhood
from a small town in Waco. So a small town and, living, in Los Angeles at the time and in the party scene and just hanging out with a lot of musicians and the who's who, but just zero accountability and just, in that kind of scene. And so for me,
so faith wasn't a part of your life.
Faith was not a part of it.
Yeah.
I grew up in Catholic school, Catholic elementary, all that stuff, but it was a check in the box, like whatever. It wasn't like a faith-driven deal. But so for me at the time, I was probably 20, 21, living in Los Angeles, and just in the party scene, get married less than a year after that. So married to me when mentally and maturity, not ready to start a family and didn't really know, how to navigate that path, but married her and have two awesome kids. I have a 14-year-old boy and 11-year-old girl.
What are their names?
From Hudson and Aniston.
Aniston?
Yep.
Oh, sweet.
And so amazing kids, and just the path there was just, again, super broken, super lost, numbing any pain that I have. I would numb a substance, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so ended up moving to, then I had to instead of just long hair, hippie, California guy, I had to get a job. And now I'm married. I gotta do this thing, right?
Yeah.
Having my first kid. So I had to, cut the hair, stop doing drugs and get a job.
Cut the hair, stop doing drugs, and get
that's
a job.
the priority list.
Hey, can
right
we
there.
tell every boy out there,
It's
please, this is
really?
a good starting point.
You can have him speak at youth ministry. Just on those 3 points.
Oh, this is great though.
It was
Get
a
a job. Oh, so how old are you at this point?
So I was
You get
21
married
at
young?
that point. Yeah, I was 21.
Okay, so you
Yep.
were
And
young. Wow.
and what moved? So got a job and got into healthcare. Right, it was my first job in healthcare and pharmaceuticals, and moved me to Oklahoma City. That being said, at home wasn't the greatest. And so so for 10 years, I traveled every single week. Traveled around. I was the highest level from executive platinum with American Airlines to the Marriott. So I don't care, rental car.
You got in all the clubs.
It was the top of the top.
All the airport clubs.
Because I traveled nonstop. And it was just, and when I came home for 3 days, honestly, I would rest and play some golf, hang out with some friends. I was highly involved in my church at the time. So it would be just traveling all week. And then I'd come over those 3 days and I was leading men's groups. I was growing teams. I was just everything I could do for those 3 days. So again, it wasn't coming home to wife and kids. It was coming home to men and faith. And so through that process, and again, I was there 12 years, and it just, same thing, just I couldn't get out of that rut or that negativity and or the dark cloud that was over it. And it was just got to a point where there was no return. And so unfortunately, went down if I'm not, happy here, I'm going to look for happy there. Because
an affair is involved in this story, it's so triggering. So when we tell our story, it's like I told my story to Hannah when I met her in Thailand, Bianca when we went to lunch. And it's like, it's always the biggest gut-wrenching thing because everybody either can't relate at all and kind of if you were to, so if you were if I were to have ever heard about a divorce, even not even for a wrong reason, but I remember being young and just being in my first marriage and saving myself for marriage in theory and just not being able to relate to that at all and totally having grace for it, but in a way still thinking I was better than people. I did marriage God's way, so that's why I don't have depression, or that's why I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was always there to help them, but almost like they were a person with a disease. Can I give you medicine? Because I did marriage the right way, so let me give you medicine. So it's I totally know where people's minds are at, and I don't judge the not being able to understand
it.
A huge piece of divorce in general, and I believe blended families is when you meet a couple and you're just in church, in the church lobby, and you meet them and you're oh, your family's so cute and whatever. And then you can kind of tell that maybe this is a second marriage or maybe, whatever. If you say, I was divorced, people tag you immediately. It's almost like you get a tag. Yeah. Where if you're oh, my husband died of cancer or something sweet, people are God brought you a new husband. We love that. It's blended families are celebrated if they think that
it's for the right reason.
For the right reason.
Yep. This is really, really good stuff.
And so it's
for everybody who circles a church lobby.
Yeah. Well,
how to talk to people. For real.
Well, and it's a huge piece of, honestly, my heart from growing up in ministry. And so blended families are all dynamics. It's everything from, real reasons to not real reasons to, trauma to loss of a child, miscarriages. I mean, like there's so many things that go into why someone split up and why we need to like somehow rectify it in our mind to then choose a side or choose someone to like, side with. I actually ended up going to a program and the program brought The Road. And The Road actually brought me to Y'all Were Still Harvest.
Way. That was years ago.
Yeah, you were still in that high school building.
Word.
I had been praying. I mean, I church shopped for probably 6-7 months.
And y'all weren't together at this point?
Nope. Now we're just doing our own thing. We're healing. We're getting our divorces.
I've separated. So I'm living for a year and a year out, separated in a different.
But he kind of was like, I'm not okay with church after that. All that happened. And I'm going, or I don't know how I feel about it. And I'm going, I have to stay connected to God or I will end my life. Like I have to. So I'm single momming it. I am working 2 jobs. I am getting support from my parents, and I love them, but they're pastors, so they didn't know how to handle the shame either. Sure. Like they were so shamed. I was their like trophy ministry child, so to speak. Yep. And they let me live with them for a little while, and they loved my daughter to this day. My daughter and them have the greatest relationship because of that season where I would work nights and they would put her to bed or, things like that. But so I was praying to God. I came here. I sat in the back for 2-3 years and just took a break and asked God, like this, like Pastor Ben who leads worship.
Yes, yeah.
That is what like really truly got me here because it wasn't a performance. It was so real. It was so raw. And he was like, literally every sermon that Pastor Desson spoke, it just was in what I was going through. It was like the deep trench stuff. And I said, this is like where I'm supposed to be for a while to heal and just sit in the back and have no one know me. And so that's like my story of this. But then, so I decided to try to get involved here. I'm still, again, single mom. We're still just kind of doing our own thing. And God opened up an opportunity with me to go to Nashville to be a scriptwriter for Kelly Pickler's show.
Wow. Okay. Yes.
So I moved to Nashville and I truly believe that's where God kind of like.
Did you take your daughter with you?
Yes.
Okay.
So we lived in this cute little yellow house and I walked her to her preschool at Vanderbilt every day. She went to Vanderbilt preschool. And she was in a learning program where she got to do schooling with children with special needs. And it's an integrated preschool and they both kids teach the other kids stuff. It was the coolest season of my life. I went to the Belonging there, got highly involved there. It was just a really great healing season. Tennessee, Nashville in general is actually an extreme mental health healing recovery city. So they have so many recovery programs there. Good. Music. Yeah. Whatever. Everything that just kind of heals your soul is there. Yeah. And so it was a really, really, I would say that's like a huge piece of our story because without Nashville, I don't know we'd even really be here today. But because of, and I mean, an important piece too is that I have pretty much full custody of my daughter. Okay. Her dad lives in Florida. Okay. And has just gotten remarried, and he's just at his favorite job ever, and they're really, really successful
and happy,
and he just got married, and so. We do a really great job.
And that's where I wanted to go with this too, is like, how did you navigate the exes? Because this is where the blended family thing comes in.
When it comes to our ex-spouses, like it's still the same thing. We're like, it's completely different. Like it's completely different. Like she's got a great relationship and great communication with her ex. It's.
And can you tell me how you established that? And can you tell me about, I'm talking to Melissa right now. Tell me how you established a great relationship with an ex. And then Bryan, can you tell me your experience and how you with Hudson and
Aniston.
Yep.
When we got married, so Bryan came to Nashville and proposed and said, I want to do this relationship the right way. I want to start over and I want God to bless our relationship. And so we actually got the blessings from my parents to do it God's way. And really just see what God was honestly gonna do. And so we moved back to Dallas because his ex is here in Dallas. And so we moved to Dallas to be with his kids and to see what happened. So that's when we integrated the kids.
And were you happy to do that?
Yes.
Or was that hard?
Yeah. So these are
kids that at this point aren't in your life, right?
No. So and honestly, I had been a children's minister for his son.
Yeah.
So I was Melissa. I was Pastor Melissa, kind of.
Yeah.
And so there's just this awkward dynamic of how is this going to work?
Right.
How is everything going to blend? Right. Okay, like hold on. So
you were happy to do it.
I was.
Okay.
I was. He's got 2 wonderful kids. I have 2 wonderful bonus kids. And that's truly too why, and that we'll get to this is how I believe doing blended families God's way and like how we've chosen to do it. So a huge piece of my healing with my ex, number one, my ex stayed really close with the Lord during our divorce process. And he was very hurt, but he was very kind. And he leaned into the church in Florida that he was at, and I leaned in here. And so I truly believe that because we both did that, we sowed seeds even in those really painful, breaking moments of this isn't a God thing, but how do you do a non-God thing in a God way? That's like my huge platform that I like. If divorce is happening and God hates divorce, how is God still going to, his ways are so much higher than ours, and he's got standards for a reason. He has things he tells us to do for a reason, and we still make our own choices.
Yes.
But then this is where grace steps in, and this is like whatever. Exactly. So the title of this, that Hannah sent me was The Beauty in Blended Families, and I just started bawling. And he was like, "What are we going to say the beauty of it is?" It's like so difficult and so hard. But I just have never known God's grace more than being in a blended family. I grew up in a perfect pastoral, honestly, besides the abuse, I had secretly been whatever. My life was like perfect, and God was like so present in every moment. And it was just, so this is it's not that. It is very messy. Blended families are so messy, and you have so many dynamics going on. A huge piece was when we were married several months. My ex came to Dallas on a business trip, and he wanted to hang out with our daughter, Malin. And he came to the house to pick her up. And then he came back to drop her off, and he said, "Hey, is Bryan inside?" And I said, Yeah. And then he was like, Can you ask him to come out? Like, I really would like to talk to him. And I was like, okay.
This could be really good or really bad. We're about to find out, though.
I came in, he's like in there doing work and whatever. And I'm like, "Hey, Alex wants to talk to you." And he goes, "Haha, funny." And I'm like, "No, I go, Alex wants to, this is a huge piece of our story." So Bryan walks outside. I go, "Do I need to take Malin in?" Like, I didn't know how intense it might get. I didn't know,
What's about to go down.
And then Alex, my ex, was like, "No, I'd like her to stay." And at this time, we had just found out we were pregnant. And so with our baby, Skylan. But we didn't know it was a girl yet. But so he goes, my ex meets Bryan at the door with a handshake. And it was
congratulations.
Congratulations on your daughter.
Having a baby. Congratulations.
And he said, "And I want you to know, there's no hard feelings at this point. Like, I've forgiven everything." And he said, "And I just want us all to move on. And I love who you are and like the stepdad you are to Malin." And I just am bawling. I don't think I've ever cried so hard quietly in my life. I'm just like watching this moment. It was so powerful for my 5-year-old. Malin was 5 maybe.
And she saw this happen.
To see finally her stepdad and her real dad now in a circle space, talking, shaking hands. Again, she still doesn't know the story. And hopefully, again, I get to be the one who tells it, not someone else trying to undermine. But
wow.
So that was a huge,
was that big for you, Bryan?
Yeah,
moment.
totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I mean, we both, I think, came inside and cried and said that was like the coolest moment of grace, like tangible moment of grace that we've ever fully seen because
again, you go through this process, or our process, our story, our journey, and there's still so much we haven't forgiven ourselves to today. Like there's still so many things that like we have not forgiven ourselves for. And so when you have someone on the outside that's personally felt the pain of it, say, hey, I'm good. I'm saying like he's forgiven us, but we can't even forgive ourselves. And so it's just, it was a, you need momentum in life. And that was just we were flatlined for a while because we're just trying to navigate these new waters and neither one of us come from a divorced family. And like, both of our parents have been married for 80 years or however long. And so, we, something like that just creates momentum, right? And it just kind of gets you going on the right path and go, well, heck, if he can stand up and be a man and feel this way and do that, then we've got to forgive ourselves and we need to. So that was a huge piece.
Do you continue to have a good relationship with him?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
So we saw him yesterday. They came into town for my daughter, for Malin's gymnastics. And his new wife is a ministry child as well. And she does a lot of really cool stuff with sex trafficking. And she has a really powerful story too. But, she we got to take a selfie. Together. What blended families get to do that? They really don't. And we're not overly cheesy either. I'm very realistic when we walk into a space together that we know, hey, this still might hurt, or this still could feel awkward, or this still
it's super awkward.
Right.
And it might always be that way. But
genuinely, it's like focused on Malin and like giving her that love. And so because of her and because of like that dynamic, it's just loving her is loving each other and giving kind of just blanketing every time we hang out with grace. And like, because it gets awkward, because it, it'll be really, 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 really good. And then all of a sudden in 1 second, it like goes sour and you don't really know why. And you're just kind of like, okay.
That's when I do that fake phone call. I got this.
But I'm not very lucky. I'm very blessed that it's not perfect. We're navigating it. We are a 2 different state dynamic as well. So the periods that Malin will go see them is longer. She stayed with them for the summer this year. And that was incredibly heart-wrenching. And so, like you write things like, oh, I miss my daughter. And people are always ready to be like, well, you shouldn't have gotten divorced, or you shouldn't have done this, or you shouldn't have done that. And it's just like, was that needed? Like, was that needed? Not really. So my dynamic is totally different. We have Malin pretty much full-time during the school year. And then now we have an ours baby, is what they call it. And
an ours baby?
An ours baby is what they call it in second marriages or whatever. But, and then we have his kids.
Yeah, so talk about your kids
now
and how that
to close out her journey.
Yes.
Like I think the biggest, like from my point of view, like the biggest thing I've noticed is just like the mutual respect, and so how her ex has respect for her and vice versa. So whenever he's in town, or if he needs something, if we need to drive over here or drop off at the airport or do this or do whatever, she fully respects that and wants Malin to be with her dad. So there's a lot of respect, which help navigate those waters. And so that's one thing I've noticed of the two. They just have a combination of respect.
That's a great suggestion for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just, at some point, you have to just let it go and respect and honor each other.
If you're truly putting the kid first, it has to be done that way.
That's it. If you're truly putting the kid first.
Yeah. Mine's a little different, a little bit. Mine is still, so it has been, what has it been? 6 years? It's been 6 years.
Hudson's how old?
So he's 14 now.
Oh, wow. 14. Okay.
14 now. And then Aniston's 11. Okay. And it's been 6, give or take 6 years, however long. And it's still an extremely toxic relationship. It's to the point where there's no phone calls or texting. It's 100% email. Yeah. There's a lot of...
So the grace you're getting from this side isn't...
Yeah, absolutely. Like I use her a lot on advice and wisdom because when it's my story, it's emotions.
Sure.
When it's her story, it's emotions. I have zero emotions with her story.
Yep. Yeah.
And so when she comes to me for advice, it's like, it's a very unbiased opinion. Yep. So I try to do the same. So, cause if I get an email, I mean, I will get fat thumb that thing so quick and get a quick reply. She's like, okay, here's the deal. Let's just let's take a deep breath. Let's talk about it. And then, we even do the 24-hour rule sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so,
which is my favorite rule.
Just do not reply to that email for 24 hours. Yep. And so it's, I'm hoping gets better.
Yeah.
I feel like slightly it's gotten better. And her new husband's amazing. Her new husband. So
we'll talk to her new husband for 45 minutes at a basketball game or whatever.
Which helps to kind of her point. We're at a basketball game or volleyball game and my little girl sees us talking. That melts her heart because she loves us both. She's got a great relationship with him. And that's the biggest piece is like, for me, it's just like, if the kids love him and they feel protected and comfortable, then it's like, it's the greatest thing, a dad. Because during my process, my kids were, especially Hudson, the older one at the time, but he was still young, but older of the two was depressed and would say some things that are alarming to a father. And if anything during bad happens, during the divorce. And if anything bad happens, you would never forgive yourself. It's just period. And so having a guy that she's remarried that they respect and love and like, I mean, that is so huge. So huge.
So talk to me about how you bonded with each other's kids.
This is good.
Yeah.
Because I you guys are all about the kids.
Right.
You want the kids to be cared for and loved, and you love each other's ex-spouses and all this stuff. Like, it's a really pretty picture of it all. So how did you...
For me, it was easy personally because Malin was so young.
And she's just so loving. I mean, she literally...
I have her 24/7.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Right. And so like it was easy for me what I can establish with her at the beginning, when we all started living together, like what I can establish in 1 month with her would take her 6 months or a year because of they're over there every other weekend or on the Tuesday. So for me, it was easy. She's one of the greatest kids ever. And that's like,
she really is.
You could not draw up a better kid for me to have a bonus kid. She really is. She's awesome. I would do anything for her. And I get in trouble by Melissa sometimes because she'll say no and she'll come to me. Like, of course, baby. Yeah, of course you can.
What does she call you?
Brian.
She calls me Brian.
Brian, yeah.
Or Bootsa.
Bootsa. Brian.
Bootsa or Brian. But like for her, it's easy. I would do anything for her. I treat her just as it's an equal. It's not... When we're together, my favorite thing is when the six of us are together and we take trip. We go to Florida, go to Disney Worlds, or we went to Nashville for Thanksgiving, got an Airbnb and spent a week in Nashville together and took them some honky tonks and get some chicken and waffles. But like, that's my favorite thing on the planet is all six and
the
travel.
Beautiful blended family.
The beautiful blended family. It's my favorite on the planet. And but I treat them all the same. There's no, as far as discipline, as far as, rewarding or behavior, it's all even, which makes them feel all equally welcome.
Yep.
And so that's my big. So Malin was super easy.
That's great.
Just because again the time of with her and the dynamics of it, but it's it's different for her because for her she's got to almost start over each time.
Older, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and they're more separated. Yep.
And I mean, we talk about our exes and how not easy it is for me, but how much more pleasant it is for me, where on your side it's not. Well, then the step parent dynamic, it's easy for him,
easier for him with Malin,
and then it's like a lot of work for me.
Talk about the work and how do you navigate.
And so,
that?
I mean, a huge piece, even that we talked about last night before coming to talk with you, is just his kids are all over social media, and so I've grown up in the family I did, and the platform that they had. I mean, if I wanted a belly button ring when I was 16.
Whoa.
Like, my dad turned it into some sermon. You know what I mean?
Sure,
like, I'm sitting on the front row going, why are you telling everybody I asked you for one? You know what I mean? Like, so
your stuff's out there.
My life has been an open, like glass windows, glass house. And so, so, a huge piece, like I said, of me telling my truth 6 years ago. Why it was so important is because I have lived my life as a glass house, and I didn't like anything where the enemy, like anything you hide, the enemy has full access and power to.
Yep, he's got it.
And that's going to be your reason you can't do what God's asking you to do. That's always going to be your thing. And so I just never want an anchor to be anchoring me somewhere. And so with this process, like I've read so much on step parenting. I'm like so wanting to do this the right way and wanting to love them the right way. And, but and some people are so open and their stepkids read their content on their social media. And while I can tell you being a step parent is difficult. It is very difficult. It's very taxing emotionally and not because they are difficult, but because
the role,
the responsibility, genuinely I care and I'm so I was a children's minister forever. So like for me, when something's happening, like I'm always wanting to say, okay, how can we get God in this? And how can, and I want to talk about everything where like people who are probably like, who cares? Y'all just fight it out or whatever. I mean, I'm sure that that's like even just like of a lesser weight, but like every time something happens, I want to like, let's talk about it. Like I want to hear I want to hear your concerns, and a huge piece for me is that when I go, oh, this is like so hard, or like I put myself in their shoes every single time that this is not something that they signed up for. In fact, they had no say in it, right? And how much anxiety does that bring us when something happens in our life? Like someone gets sick, someone gets in a car accident. It was out of our control. We didn't choose it, but yet we live with the consequences of it. And that's how stepkids feel all the time. And I mean, they joke me so hard because pretty much almost every weekend, if not every other weekend, when we've had like something we really worked through, whether it's their mom and him getting into an argument or some disagreement or some, even just like rooms. And like right now, the two girls share a room because we're not in like a huge place right now. And like, I don't want to share a room. And, like I just tell them how proud I am. Like, and they laugh because I'll just cry. I'm like, I am so proud of y'all are doing the work right now. Y'all coming to this living room and talking. It's so much work. And I want you to know like most adults don't even do this.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, and I'm so proud of you. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the coolest thing about being a blended family is the grace that you can experience in those moments, because there's so many moments that need grace, but to like feel it and experience it is so intense. And grace is given when you don't deserve it.
That's the whole point of it.
That's the point. Right? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. And so,
wow.
A huge dynamic, with me and Hudson. I mean, he's a 14-year-old boy and I grew up with just a sister. And so this teenage boy thing is so new to me. But, me and him are more heartfelt. Like we have 3 girls and Hudson's the only boy. But I will tell you, he is the most kind, sensitive, loving one of the bunch. I mean, if the 2-year-old is crying, Hudson's there first before even sometimes me or the other girls. You know what I mean? Because he's like, it's okay. It's okay.
He's like a high responder for sure.
He's a high responder, big lover, trying to navigate his own stuff. He's highly involved at the church that he's at, in youth group, and just trying to get him to do and seek God more. And him and I relate on a spiritual level because he'll go to like camp and then he'll want to talk about it. He'll want to talk about how
you've been to like 1,000 camps.
Yeah. And so like, tell me about camp. I want to hear about it, and missions is like a huge piece. And he got to go on a missions trip last year. And so
where did he go?
Guatemala. Wow. He signed up for Guatemala. He did. He went Guatemala and he went to Miami, right?
Oh yeah, he did
for an inner city missions trip too. And so we connect on that level. And then my stepdaughter, she was, when we first got together, she was the one who really not only had me at arm's length, but probably 2 arm's lengths, right?
Yeah.
And
this is exactly what I want to.
And so,
how do you break through that?
She had some walls up for sure.
Yeah. She had a lot of walls up. I will say that getting pregnant with our daughter was a huge connection piece for me and her, because she was so excited to be an older sister and not a big sister based on a stepsister. Like that's a whole nother dynamic, but like a big real sister. And so I would say her and I work a ton on our relationship. And then because I bring a child into the mix and he brings a child into the mix, it's a completely different dynamic too than if you just marry someone with kids and you don't have some of your own. And so, the mama bear mentality never goes away. So my little one, who's Malin, who's intense, she's beautiful, she's wonderful. Her love language is touch. So if she's anywhere near you, she's going to have all legs on you and she's going to be like in your face and like telling you everything and loving on you. And like Aniston is just, she's so different. She's not, you have to earn that space and she has to be the one to be able to come cuddle with you, not the vice versa. Yep. And so
you took the time to figure that out about her though.
Yes. Yes. And not trying to like force her to be Malin. Or force this like family dynamic that I had as a kid that was like, everybody's on the same team. Well, no, like in blended families, everybody is not. And, you leave your mom's, this is like the huge piece. You leave your one house and you've been living under rules of, we eat vegan, we eat, healthy. We go to bed at 8:00 and we don't have another sibling over there. And it's us. So like over there, Aniston was the baby. So she would come from her mom's house where she got everything taken care of. And then now she's the oldest sister. And me being an oldest sister, I mean, I think at like 8, I was like doing dishes and I was making breakfast and I was taking care of my sister. And so, I mean, we're still having to, she'll come over and be like, well, mom always does this for me. Or, and so really they're jumping between worlds and their brains aren't even big enough to process that they're jumping between worlds.
Oh, for sure.
And
so when that happens, Bryan, do you how much leeway? Oh, I'll preface with this. I have a dear friend who is blended family and she told me, she was like, I would almost say I have the perfect marriage until the child comes in. It's not even a child, it's a young adult. But she was like, we are in perfect sync until he comes into the story. And then it's like, no, we need to do this. And no, we need to do this. And so how do you navigate that between each other?
Through some troubleshooting, right?
Sure.
Some trial and error.
Talk about
because that's dead on, right? As far as your friends. So we have friends that are blended families that live 2 separate lives. Okay. And we never want that, right? And so
that's good. Yep. That's great.
But it's so true that again, when my kids come around, I only have them for 72 hours. Right. So as a dad, I'm like, okay, we're going to go to a football game. We're going to go to the mall. We're going to go get pizza. We're going to do all this stuff.
We're going to do all this stuff.
We're going to entertain. This is like the fun. We're the Disney house.
Because
we are.
Totally. But it's like, that's not realistic. That's not real, right? And so honestly, there's been tons and tons. Did I say tons? Tons. So we've had some conflicts, some arguments about that. Absolutely, 100%. It's gotten better. Just due to communication, right? And
between you and Melissa?
Between me and Melissa, okay, right? And so just setting those boundaries, setting those guidelines, because for a while, I probably did, it's again, what we talk about is it's this energy comes over sometimes. Yeah. Okay. And maybe it's not, we have our core values as our family is love and grace and family and fun.
Yep.
And so that's not everybody's. And so sometimes people could come over and there's a negative energy there. So I have them for 72 hours or we have them for 72 hours and it takes half that time to get them here
with what we're doing.
Sync with us. So now we're in sync now and then it's time to go home. And then it's a week. And so now we're starting over, right? So each time it's starting over, but to your point, a lot of triggers, a lot of battles of, we used to have tons of conflict whenever the kids would come over and it's just so-and-so has an attitude like so-and-so or the energy of so-and-so or why are we doing this? Or to her point, it's like, the hands are out and can I have this? Can I have that? This. And I'm not an ATM. I'm not a chef, personal chef. Like if you're hungry, eat yourself. You're old enough. And so
and we have Malin too. And so again, that mama bear and me, if like they're not like including her or, just going, okay, like You know what I mean? Like I'm Aniston's stepmom. I am Malin's mom. And I'm just going to have to help them try to figure it out because I don't know how I would figure it out either.
Because as a guy, as a dad, I'm like, okay, to me, I look at them all equal. So they're brothers and sisters. And if they have an issue, let them deal with it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, let them argue or fight or like, let them just work it out like we did growing up.
Right. You know, just throw a few punches.
I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to like create these blended family rules about siblings and like, and so she and I would struggle about that. She's like, no, she needs to be included. And I'm like, okay, well, and so we would go and just try to say, hey, you know, if you have friends over, can you at least include her for a little bit, not the whole time, so you can still get some time just with your friend, but include your little sister and it is.
I mean, you know,
do
you use that verbiage? They're sisters, brothers.
Yeah, they're sisters.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay,
absolutely.
That's great. Okay,
and
so you don't use the step.
No.
Great. Okay.
No, I mean, so what happened one time? I went to go drop Aniston off at her friend's house, and there was like it was in a nice neighborhood, so they're like, "Hi." They come to the window. You know, who are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm dropping my daughter off at, you know, so-and-so's house. Well, that made her really upset. I didn't know it did till a week later, right? Because she mentioned like, I'm not your daughter. This was way, way, way in the beginning too. Yep. And so it just opened up my eyes like, okay, let me ask them, like, do they want, like, because in my opinion, I didn't want to say stepdaughter and make her feel awkward. I don't want to put the step word on it. So then I'm like, okay, family meeting.
This is so good, you guys.
So we had,
so what did you?
We're super intentional
what did you do
about this communication piece. We do family meetings.
We do family meetings all the time.
All six.
It's almost like this. You have
okay.
2-year-old.
This is great.
You have an open platform to like, what are you feeling?
What do you want me to call you?
And will they talk?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So they're so used to family meetings that they'll let it out.
It's just,
okay.
What do you like? What do you don't like?
How did you deal with that situation?
So I said, you know, I called you kind of just my daughter because I wanted to make sure you always feel loved and cared for. But I want you to know I am not I'm never trying to be your mom.
Yep.
So what would you like to be called? Here's some terms I found on the internet. Like, do you want to be bonus daughter? Do you want to be stepdaughter? Do you want to be whatever? And like Hudson's so funny. He's like, you can call me your son or your stepson. I don't care. Like, and you know, she's
Hudson
like,
has no preference.
And she's like, I'll be your stepdaughter or bonus. I mean, you can call me what you want. You know what I mean? Like, when she heard why I said that.
That's exactly it.
Then
she needed to know your heart
that's the deal.
behind it. It wasn't about the verbiage.
She mentioned earlier that they had no say in this. So it's almost like
giving them
some power.
Oh, you guys.
Give them some power because through this entire process, they've had zero power. They felt helpless. And so this gives them any opportunity we can give them as far as what do you want to do for the family trip? What do you want us to call you? What do you want to eat? What can we do better? When you're over here, do you feel safe? Like give them as much power as possible because they felt helpless and powerless this entire time. And so she's done a really good job leading that through a lot of the stuff that she's learned through this process.
We even do that with dinners now. I mean, like for a while, it was just we were cooking whatever. And again, normally in a normal family dynamic, it's so easy. Like it's so easy to tell your kid like, no, like this is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine because really they're just angry. Oh man, I wanted pizza instead. But like for when you come over to another house in another place, if you do not feel like you are being seen or heard, it's more about I'm not being seen or heard or I wasn't asked. I wasn't included in the decision making and I feel so powerless over here. Like it's just like, I'm sure just anxiety overload. We talked the other day about Aniston had come over and I could tell she was like a little upset. And then I was trying to like play through maybe like what could have happened so that I could like introduce the conversation. And, you know, it was that Bryan went and picked them up, but with Malin. And so Malin was kind of like bonding with Bryan in the front seat or whatever.
Because Malin's with Bryan all the time.
Because Malin's with Bryan all the time. And I go, how would I feel? Because I'm a daddy's little girl. So how would I feel if every time I came over to my dad's house, number one, I didn't choose to only see my dad every other weekend. Like they have no choice over kind of the legal time that we get to see them. And so if I show up and I'm ready to see my dad because I haven't seen him in a week and a half or whatever, and I come out to my dad bonding with another little girl in the front seat, even though I love her, like this is like threatening me and like the love that my dad has for me. And so just to even like,
that's
get
so
through your own
just
thing
acknowledge
and
it. Like
acknowledge
give them a voice, give them a platform. They do have a voice. You're a member of this family, so you have a say.
It's great.
I might not agree and go with it, but I want you to have a voice. And so, but I think on that piece is just acknowledging it and then communicating it and understand, like, to your point, like putting yourself in your shoes, like, hey, I get it. I understand. I get it.
And what can we do to then so then you've taken Aniston, like if you needed to go to the grocery store real quick.
Yep.
Just I'm take her.
Hey, just take her. You know what I mean? So that she gets to pick out that fun cereal or she gets to feel like she's getting that one-on-one time or,
And it goes the distance for sure. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
So good, you guys. Okay. So in closing, speaking of blended families that are maybe starting out.
Yeah.
What would be maybe one or two? What would you say as far as advice? How do you, this has been so good. This has been so good. I have people in my family that have blended families. Like, it's just, this is like pure gold. But what would you say, like, this is what's keeping us going? This is what is really helping us navigate this journey? And I love it. Like Melissa, you said, like, it's messy. Of course it is. But really, it's all messy.
Yeah.
It's all like
anybody who's pretending like their life isn't messy is like able to sweep it under the rug better than everybody else because you don't have as much.
Like we're all dealing with the messes. But so I just love and I'm so grateful for you guys and your vulnerability. And I just think this is going to bless so many people. But for somebody who's been through what you guys have, however many years ago, that are starting to blend a family, what would you say are like some core things that you would, for both of you?
I mean, in general, I would say that every dynamic is different. I mean, we know so many blended families. And so, it's so easy to go like, why is that working for her, but it's not working for me? Or, why do they like for Bryan, like why does Melissa and her ex like have a really great dynamic, but yet like we don't like it is every blended family is genuinely not like the other. That it is a navigating moment by moment and weekend by weekend. I mean, there are some times I am like, oh my God, blended families are the best thing. Like God is so, like, I am so blessed and blah, blah, blah. And then there's a bad weekend. There is. Totally. And then I'm like, I don't know that, Lord, like, I don't know. And there's like bawling and there's, crying and there's arguing and there's a ton of dynamics. And so really a huge piece of it is just giving the amount of grace that you in turn are needing back. And really, I mean, not zoning out and like ignoring the pain and whatever, but really digging in. Because if you can dig in and you can take that time and those moments and flow with the ever-changing dynamics, everyone in that immediate group, so our 6 will benefit from the work put in. But it's just, it's so hard. It would be so much easier to grab a babysitter in that moment and go, you know what? We're grabbing a babysitter and me and him are leaving because it's too much. It's too much. It's too hard. But truly, I think just doing it with love in every moment and knowing like you're not going to always make the right choice and you're not going to know what to do, but to kind of just press in and giving everybody a voice and having everybody feel heard. Overall, if they don't like the decision that's made, if they feel heard, there's a huge difference.
Yes, that's so good.
There's a huge difference.
So good.
And then just staying honest with them, age appropriate as possible.
Great.
With, this is what we're trying to do. So example, the other day, Aniston's now becoming a preteen. And so I'm very aware. Well, I'm just very aware and everything I've read and everything like that, that like some people start out really close as blended families. And like one of my friends, her stepdaughter, something happened and her stepdaughter and her completely don't get along. Now she's like 18 and will not come over, only hangs out with the dad as long as she doesn't come. And that's where it starts to affect your marriage. That's where it starts to really murky the waters. And so I am very aware that at any moment, especially with teenage hormones and things like that things can happen. And so the other day, she was upset about something and her friend came upstairs and said something. And I said, yes, I know she's upset. I know that she's like not happy about it, but we'll talk about it, whatever. Well, then that little girl goes downstairs and was like, Melissa says she knows, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know. So then we're like, later, like she's got an attitude with me the entire time. I'm like, hey, you want to come help me cook? And she's like, no. And there's this total hurt thing. And I want to go, what is your problem? Like, I take care of you. Like, I do so much for you. Why am I getting an attitude right now? And in her mind, she's like, why would you talk behind my back? Like, why would you say something to my friend? Or like, she feels like all of a sudden I don't love her. You know what I mean? Because it's really, in a kid's mind, it's love or not love.
Yes.
It's not like a dynamic. They don't understand.
Totally. They don't get the layers, the nuances of it all.
Right. Or that I'm stressed because I just answered a work phone call that ticked me off. And so now I'm just kind of being short with you. Like, they either see
love or not love.
Warning, love, warning, not love.
Wow.
And so just like we all do, we all go into defense with our spouses or with our and like I'm a woman too, and I'm deeply still that small girl who can't stand, other girls bullying me. So I get defense. So really it is opening up, constant communication. So then I said, what do we need to talk about? Blah, blah, blah. I want everybody to be heard. And then Aniston was like, I think I have something to talk about. And
is this a family meeting?
Yes.
Oh, you guys,
later that night,
family meeting thing.
Later that night, because something was going on. No, we were going to move.
So good.
We were going to move rooms or something.
Okay.
So it wasn't even about this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to make sure you guys are always heard. How are you guys doing? Like, we haven't had one of these in a while. And does anybody have anything to say? And like Hudson's over there. Like, I just want to get back to my game and these silly family meetings. And then like Malin's like, I want to tell everybody about the new trick in gymnastics and, all the age groups and dynamics. But then Aniston raises her hand and then I watch her not. And then I was like, did you want to talk about something? And she goes, no, it's okay. Like, because she's trying to figure out if she can, if it's safe, if it's gonna, if it's gonna give her even less love, or more rejection. You know what I mean? Like, they're constantly. And so she's like, you said to, my friend, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and so I go like, immediately in that moment, that I made her feel unsafe. That's another huge, great word. Safe, unsafe, loved, not loved.
Okay.
And as adults, we have to create the safe place, even when we're triggered.
Yes.
Or when we're like, not feeling loved ourselves, or like I'm dealing with my own rejection and maybe my stepdaughter is rejecting me, but it's not about me at the moment.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
I can create a safe place.
So good.
And then when I create the safe place and she feels safe, then I can work on myself and remind myself that I'm safe and that I'm loved. And that I am actually the one who God's put in the position to give the love at the moment. I'm the big pot. They're the little glasses.
So
I need to be, I'm the one pouring. I'm not the one going, hey, are you guys going to pour into my big old pot? This is.
Right. And that's what the two of you are for.
Right.
Each other. And so that's the beautiful thing about navigating all of this, because I would imagine that gets hazy too sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Like any marriage.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's so amazing, Melissa, is like, you're not looking to them to help you feel better. That is so
and it's the biggest
evolved.
It's the biggest difference between having stepkids and your own, because with your own, there might be triggers, but really I would venture to say your sons don't trigger you.
Right.
Like,
you're right.
Or challenge you in a way because they live in your sphere.
Yes.
And you and Dustin, share them both. Yep. So there's no threats on either side. If Dustin wants to take one of them out, the other one isn't really threatened, and then you're not threatened or whatever. But it's with stepchildren, they are not yours. And so the love is given and received based on the respect and if it's allowed, so you're constantly putting yourself in a position to be rejected. And if you have a problem with rejection,
it's going to be hard.
That's a really hard step parent dynamic. Or if there's hurt there, or there's complete other that's why I say everybody's different. And I know so many people who are in blended families, if they listen to this, they're just gonna be like, well, it must be nice to have that dynamic. You know what I mean? So I'm very aware that it's constantly changing, and that we have worked so hard as a family, including them. And that's why I tell them all the time that they work so hard on doing this. And I mean, truly too, this faith aspect is a huge piece.
Yep.
Showing up for church during the pandemic, watching church together in our bed with coffee and bringing faith into it, because it's the only thing that they will be able to rely on. You know what I mean? And it is a constant. And children truly need something that they know they can count on and rely on, because when they can't count on it, then they just are kind of constantly wondering if they're okay or if they're not okay, if they're good or they're not good, if they're loved or not loved. Or
such good wisdom.
It's hard.
Oh, this is so good.
It's fun. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's
like anything in life, right?
Yeah.
that's worth something.
Yeah.
Okay,
my biggest things, I do everything in threes, but it's
that's just like Dustin.
So like for me, too. if I could say it would be educate, communicate, and patience, right?
Okay.
And so
great.
On the
break those down.
On the educate piece, it's which I did not do, was I create a lot of bad habits, kind of like the 72 hours, let's go do everything, right? So, which is it's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for disaster because guess what they expect every single time?
Yeah.
So I would say, when I say educate, it's just there's resources out there. Just there's everybody has friends and family members that are going through similar, navigating those waters, and so just ask those questions, educate. So whenever that as you start that process, you're starting it off on a more the foundation is a little bit stronger, versus this. The communicate piece, we've talked about that a lot, but just not only between mommy, daddy, or stepmommy, you know what I'm saying? It's the kids and just opening up a platform. You've got to communicate. I hate conflict. Yeah. And so it's just like, if I can tell something, Jamie, there's something wrong. Like, what's the deal? What did I do wrong? Okay, I hear you. I didn't realize that. I'll fix it or whatever. Let's move on. And so those conversations help.
So do you ever feel like if Melissa tells you like, hey, I think Malin going along on this drive might, not be the best. You may need to spend time here. Do you feel threatened, triggered, like I'm a good dad and all the way, or how do you know what I mean? Like, how do you guys navigate those suggestions from each other? Right.
And again, like the third piece, like the patience piece, because
okay, here we go.
At the beginning, it was like, no, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it all. Or no, if you're going to do something with one kid, you're doing it with all the kids. You know what I'm saying? So at first you
kind of made it the sandbox that you were talking about. And then you realized, oh no, this isn't a cut and
then
dry.
through the process and having patience and trusting one another that we have the best interest for all the kids. It has evolved into more of those strategic, like I want her to go spend time just with my son. I want her to go I love it when my daughter wants to go with her, because Malin, her daughter always wants to be with her. So that's easy.
Right.
And so, because she'll say like, hey, I'm going to go do something with Aniston and Malin, do you want to go? And I'm like, I do want to go, but honestly, I think it'd be better if I didn't go.
Yep.
To have some girl time, to have those, y'all can talk about lipstick and y'all can talk about Justin Bieber. And you know what I'm saying? So like have those moments. And so I think over time, and again, that's where the patience piece is, you're going to screw up. Yep. It's going to be painful. You're going to shed some tears.
Yep.
It's not going to be a fun process, but it's just like, as you grow, there's going to be growing pains. And, we've felt a lot of pain, but we're getting on the other side of that where we're hopefully, we handle it better.
So good.
Well, and I think too, if we can talk about one more thing that I just think is so real in the blended family space is just the marriage piece of it.
Yes.
Because I know it's probably the most hurtful piece, and it's the reason why a lot of second marriages don't work either.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't seen this done right or perfect. I mean, again, I have so number one, having a community, and a community not for the source of complaining. I mean, I'm on so many stepmom Facebook pages that I've had to just kind of mute.
Where they're just going off on.
Yeah, so I joined them to kind of learn how.
Educate.
Learn cool things and educate.
Right.
But it's like, it's so triggering. Like one mom says, oh my goodness, the birth mom did this today. And everybody's, oh my gosh, my birth mom. And it's just, you got to protect yourself.
It's great.
Got to protect your family from toxic environments. I mean, I think it was a good friend of mine was like, if you could imagine everybody has kind of like a vaccination needle, and every time you go into their sphere or enter a conversation with them, they'll be injecting you with something. And is it going to be something good or bad? And so we're really strategic on the, people we, number one, take advice from. Don't take advice from marriages or step family, blended families that aren't working. When you walk into a relationship with a dynamic maybe that you don't want to be like, you walk in knowing, I'm here to learn. I'm here to help, give advice maybe, because maybe someone else needs something that's working for us that isn't working for them. And then I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
And so with Bryan and I, with our marriage specifically, I mean, we are now almost married 3 years, but the first year was so with the blended family, like it would work with the kids for the weekend. It would be the best weekend with the kids ever. But on the opposite side, it was the worst weekend for marriage ever. You know what I mean? And we're recovering for 4 days or something like that. And you have real emotions, you have real things, that you could never say that your, kids or stepkids would ever be able to hear or understand. But, we prioritize our relationship to the point where we have a date night, if not once, but twice a week. We started incorporating the weekends we do have them, having a short date night so that they can
see that.
It's normal.
And it not be the Disney weekend, but we're having a babysitter come over for 2 hours. We're going to go grab a coffee. We're going to go, whatever. And the first time we did that, because it was like 2 years into it, it was like meltdown. Like, why don't you guys go on dates when we're not here? Like, just like.
You want to model for them.
And we do that too. But
Good.
But modeling some type of normalcy and modeling a relationship that they can like look up to. And a marriage that they can hopefully, want. And then honestly, like most step families, blended families that I know, their stepkids don't really like respect both people as kind of like the head of the household. It's kind of always like, well, it's my dad, so I'll just ask my
you're
dad.
biologically attached to is
or
the one that
my mom or and whatever. And we deal with that. We've been dealing with that with Malin lately a lot. But to just incorporate that date night, number one, is like huge piece. The constant communication. A huge piece of advice I got from someone was whenever your children or your in-laws or your mothers or whoever, when they ask me something, it's just perfectly respectful, and you show everybody that like who your first is by going, let me talk with Bryan about that.
Great.
So if the kids...
So you do that with the kids?
Yeah. So if the kids
let
ask...
me talk to Melissa, let me talk to
He'll
Bryan.
go, let me talk to Melissa. Even if he already knows what I'm going to say.
These
even if it's
practicals are so good.
A friend spending the night.
Let me... Or they'll come to me because they like know that I'm like in this area. Like I love my Starbucks. So if they want to go to Starbucks, they know to ask me.
Let's go get a...
And so I'll always be like, well, like I'll talk to your dad. And
but it creates structure because remember, like, what is it? Daddy's Home? Is that like Mark Wahlberg, Will Ferrell?
Yes. That's
so like
Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, Will Ferrell's house, and it's like, where the heck is all your underwear? You have no underwear here. Then Mark Wahlberg's going, God dang, where'd you get all this underwear? So, because the dynamics of, it's my son's a big shoe guy, so for like Christmas or birthdays, you're buying these crazy expensive Jordans or Fear Guides or all this stuff. And it's like, so I buy that for Christmas and then like, I don't ever see them because they're over there. And when you come over for the weekend, you don't bring them. So I'm just going, dang, will you at least bring them? Can I at least see you wearing them? Like it's so messy. But to her point, what that does is it creates a structure so they know what to expect. Yep. So there is hopefully they don't have anxiety.
Right.
Because you don't want to create extra weight or anxiety on them. You want to create a structure, a loving structure where they know what to expect. Yep. They know, hey, if I brought these, do this, bring the Xbox. I mean, because I could never imagine the nonsense and the crap they have to go through. Yep. And I mean, basically you're just packing back and forth. Yeah. And so to create a structure that's a healthy, loving structure.
Planning ahead. I mean, we plan like a month ahead so that the 2 weekends we have them, we know one's like a fun Disney weekend, but the other one is like, okay, we're going to give them specific chores. Like we want this to feel like real home, or we want, like we'll let friends spend the night this night, but not that weekend. Or, it's like, it's a lot of planning that way too. We can tell them ahead of time, hey, make sure you bring your suit over since you took it back to your mom's.
Right. And then you take away the anxiety. Of
and then you kind of give them something so that they know what they're walking into instead of so many question marks.
Because they're already dealing with so much anxiety. So like my son, highly involved in the church that I was a part of for 12 years. And so like men's
they're still there.
They're still there. So he's got all of his friends there. And so it's like when it comes to men's breakfasts, when it comes to men's conferences, he always says, because I always used to go to those and he was too young to go. Now he's like, man, Dad, I just wish that because I'm not going to step in that atmosphere. And so it's like, I wish you could be there. So there's already anxiety and
already shame,
and that's what a father's a father's dream is to go to these men's conferences, men's breakfasts, and bring your sons. Right. Like that's like a dream come true.
So we say, how can we do that at our house? Like, how can we do that at our church? At our, like, what can we do that helps them get that
feed that desire in him, because you love that desire in him.
Right, absolutely. It's something every father wants that, right? And it's just like, so now the time's here, but 2 different churches, 2 different worlds almost. Yep. And so they already feel that anxiety and that disappointment. And so it's just, how do you minimize that? And again, it's to the point about the statistics at the beginning of the talk is just, when we were still navigating this with my son, it's just like half his friends, 50% of his friends are dealing with the same thing. 50% of the people he hangs with at church are doing the same thing. So it's a very common thing at school. 50% of the people, his friends at school. So it's not too taboo as a kid. It's a pain in the butt as a kid. It's just really these adults that love, like, the church people that love. Church people
I like
that
you went there because
church people are perfect. They don't judge. But if they were to judge,
we're all perfect.
It would be us. And so, so it's not the kids. The kids, it's a pain in the butt. And they have anxiety, but it's the adults that are like, it's the shaming and the judging. Just going, come on, man.
And Hudson specifically had a friend whose parents just split up. And, I was driving him to school last year before the pre-pandemic. And he was like, I think God allowed me to learn everything I needed to learn when Dad got a divorce, because now I can help my friend.
Isn't that awesome?
So to be able to just
already,
the verse like God works
28,
God works all things for your good. It's like to be able to understand that concept, like these are the big wins in the blended families. You know what I mean?
When I was 13 and 14, that's not what I was talking about. Sure. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's so powerful,
Oh, you guys. Wow. It's so good. Well, thank you. For opening your hearts and your lives to people. Honestly, I think it's going to help people going through it, which is over 50%. I think it's higher in the church, actually. Yes. And it's going to help, hopefully, church people listening as well to be a little less judgy.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right?
I'm really passionate about that. Like, it's enough of the pretending, enough of the acting, enough of the judginess. Like, these are real people going through real things.
It happens to everybody. We don't plan on half of what happens to us. I mean,
nope.
If you were lucky enough to grow up with everything and everyone and all 4 of your grandparents and blah, blah, you are the rarity. And so...
And life will still get us all. And thank God. And this is the theme of the talk that I love that you guys just bring up over and over. It's just, if life gets us all, but grace. But grace.